lecture 2 of IFSAL's ICC, sorry, FTPS Media. Sorry, I teach ICC as well, so I'm easily confused. Last week, you'll recall that I adopted a historical approach to how the mass media and broadcast media have developed historically in the West, and how the models of broadcast media have generally been exported around the world and adopted by many of your countries. What we're going to focus on today primarily is theory. Okay, now a lot of people get afraid of theory. Theory does not need to be something that makes you afraid. I'm going to outline for you 3 of the most powerful, most important media theories that apply to, well, actually 2 are media theories. One is more of a general theory that apply to how we use the media. So the first one, which I'll be giving you more information about next week, is political economic approaches. Political economic approaches, which is broadly in line with Marxist assumptions. Now, just to remind you, I don't know what Marxism means to you, whether it rings alarm bells or not, especially our Chinese and Russian friends. Maybe Marxism didn't work out very well in your countries. That might be something to do with some of the things that I say today, to do with media and to do with propaganda and ideology. The second theory that I'm going to introduce to you is, no, actually 2 more theories. The first one is an example of political economic theory. It's 1988, Noam Chomsky. Has anyone heard of Noam Chomsky? Yeah. Very, very famous, very, very bright linguistician and media theorist. He wrote an amazing piece of research and book called Manufacturing Consent, 1988. And I'm going to outline with you, using a video, and I'm going to outline the main assumptions of the propaganda model. Now, what's interesting about the propaganda model is we are told, aren't we, in the democratic West, I don't know if I should say we, or at least the democratic West tells itself that all those bad countries outside of the West, they all have propaganda, Russia, China, Saudi Arabia. Actually, what Chomsky points out is, this is the way we do propaganda here. And it talks a lot about how the media message is produced in a way to influence your minds, to deflect your attention in a very particular way. Come in. And the third theory that I will share with you, that I'm most excited about, and early feedback from students in another class tells me you like this theory too, is, bless you, Ian McGilchrist's ways of attending. Okay? Now, what's beautiful about Ian McGilchrist's ways of attending is it's not political in an obvious way, but it does talk a lot about how we use the media, and more importantly than that, even how the media uses us. Right? Okay. So, how many of you have started to read Ways of Attending yet? Okay. So what I have put on Moodle are the 3 pages 13, 14, 15, which I think are the most important ones in the text that we can talk about in the seminar. I'm going to refer to them today. So let's start with some basics. Okay, so Ian McGilchrist, his hemisphere hypothesis. Those of you who have not heard me talk about this before, I don't know if it will come as a shock to you. Is it Arena, your name?
Yeah.
How many brains do you have?
Just one.
Well, what McGilchrist will say, and I'm saying this with my tongue in my cheek, is we kind of have 2 brains. Or at the very least, our brain is divided. They operate at the same, it's one brain, you're absolutely right, don't worry. You're not an octopus, right? But the brain is divided, and it's divided between the left and the right, And the way the left brain, so that's, as I face you now, this is my left brain, this is my right brain. My left brain connects with my right hand, okay? Which is why I'm right-handed, and I grab things with my right hand. I get them. That's not a coincidence, yeah? Because the left brain is all about grasping, taking, controlling, having power over, exploiting, etc., etc. If we start with this basic word attention, okay? Most people think attention is just something very, very simple. Yes, are you paying attention? Yes, I am. Okay, well, attention is actually very, very important. And what I'm hopefully going to teach you now with this theory is that the way the media pays attention to the world changes what you think about the world, and the way you use the media also changes what you think about the world. So we'll start with this. Attention is not just, it's not just what happens in your brain, right? Because what happens in your brain is like a map that you can't control. So if you wire your brain up to a scanner and you see your brain, or somebody sees what your brain's doing and how electricity is moving around, that's seeing your brain as an object, okay? The beautiful thing about having a brain is that you can use it, you can change how you use it, right? So, it's actually nothing less than the way in which we relate to the world. Remember, what I'm saying on this course, which I think is really exciting, is that truth is not something that, truth is always something that is in the middle, it's negotiated, it's communication is part of the process of truth, but there is no one single objective truth. Even science is challenging the notion of objectivity now. So this is where culture comes to play. Those of you that studied culture with me and Andrew last term, this is where power comes into play. So it doesn't just dictate the kind of relationship we have with whatever it is, it dictates what it is we come to have a relationship with. So what I'm suggesting, which some of you might find a little bit exaggerated, is that literally the way you attend to the world changes what you see. It literally changes what you see. Yeah? So this is related in many ways to new findings in neurology, new findings in physics, but also it correlates, it corresponds with some, what we broadly call ancient indigenous ways of thinking that are especially non-Western. Yeah? That's why I think it's quite exciting to share that with you, because some of you, or if not all of you, I don't want to make assumptions necessarily, come from cultures where you may be already attending to the world in a different way from the West, but the West is the dominant mode of attention, and the Western media is, would you agree, is basically dominating how we see the world right now, and that's part of the problem. That's part of the problem. So, traditionally speaking, in the West, this so-called West, where you are now, since the Enlightenment, since we've separated science from religion, we and the scientific revolution, and Descartes, who was one of the most famous Enlightenment philosophers, there were many, he theorized this split between the mind and the body, or we can also understand this split as the split between subject and object. And this is crucial to understanding Marxist political economic approaches, but also understanding McGilchrist's hemisphere approach. So how many of you here now understand the difference between subject and object? In this room now, who is a subject, who is an object? A really crazy question.
I think it depends the behavior.
Pardon?
I think it depends on the behavior.
As soon as you're speaking now,
yeah, it's not I'm a subject now.
you're taking, yes, but you're also part of what we are intersubjectively sharing. But the danger of this Western model is we always think the subject is separate from the object. For objectivity to work, for objectification to work, there has to be this political, ideological separation between subject and object. And what, again, as I said, what McGilchrist and other scientists are discovering is that there is no such thing as subjectivity outside the world. We are all in the world, and more excitingly than that, the way we attend to the world changes the world. Yeah? It changes the world. That's really powerful. That's spiritual. The way we look at the world changes our actions and changes what happens in the world. Right? So, in media terms, we are not outside the media. Okay? The way the media presents itself to us is very much like celebrities are outside of us. The world is outside of us. And we watch our little screens and the world is separate from us. This is based on this old Cartesian separation of subject and object. Objective journalists, as I will talk about in 2 weeks' time when we talk about news, particularly BBC ones, but not exclusively, they believe that when they report conflicts, when they report overseas events, foreign affairs around the world, they think they can fly into Japan, China, Saudi Arabia, and they can objectively relate, mediate what's happening. Of course they can't. They're not from that culture, right? How can you report the war in... This is the problem with the way the Palestine conflict is being reported, because it's completely biased towards the Israelis, and it's not being reported from the perspective of the Palestinians. It's like the Palestinians don't exist, or they're not important enough to talk about, right? And even, let's even go further and say, so-called BBC objective journalists and other journalists are not even mentioning the actual, and this is objective, fact that genocide is taking place. They're not even saying that, and the reason they're not saying that is for political, ideological reasons to do with the left brain. Right? I'm making very simple statements, which we can question later. So, the left hemisphere specializes in a sort of piecemeal attention. So, the left hemisphere it separates things, it fragments things, and it looks very narrowly at things and then thinks that one narrow segment of reality, a segment, is reality. Yeah? It's a bit like in quantum physics. We think that the particle is more important than the wave. What's actually happening as a result of being creatures is that change is happening all the time, but the left brain wants to fix things. This is always true. Yeah? That's not how life works. Yeah? Even history, that's not even how history works. So, the left hemisphere specializes in a sort of piecemeal attention that helps us to make use of the world. And there's a key word about the left brain: using the world. The right brain doesn't want to use the world. The right brain wants to connect with the world and learns from the other. And what happens as a result of the interaction between our right brains and other cultures and even animals is that we negotiate truth. We do not use truth as a weapon to control what other people think, which is basically colonialism. Yeah? So, I'm going to introduce you to political economic journalism through Chomsky and Herman. And it's very important that we understand Chomsky and Herman's approach to not the left brain, right brain thing, but to media, before we come back to McGilchrist. I think McGilchrist provides complexity that's maybe a little bit absent from Chomsky's theory, but that's not to say that Chomsky's theory isn't very, very important and very, very powerful. And of course, we'll come to Stuart Hall after that. So, as I've said already, political economy is basically a Marxist approach. Now, again, why should I tell you what Marxism means? Some of you come from countries where Marxism has changed your country, and I don't think we've ever been Marxist in the West, to be honest, not in this country. Because don't forget the UK is where capitalism began. So anyway, so what is Marxism? Would anybody like to share what they think Marxism is, how it's been used as this cultural theory? I mean, a lot of you will know that SOAS, in a way, specialises in Marxist approaches to decolonisation. So Marxism is not dead in SOAS. It's not to say that SOAS is stuck in the past, but there are many aspects of Marxist thinking that, you know, are still very important in understanding the world. Remember, the right brain understands, the left brain doesn't. Sorry?
I said the left use the word uses.
The left uses the world. So does communism use the world? Does socialism use the world? Historically, has it used the world? Of course it has.
Yeah.
So, in a way, what's interesting about the hemisphere hypothesis is that it's not just a critique of traditional conservative power or liberal power, it's also a critique of socialist power. Socialist power has always ended up having problems. You know, centralization, killing people, elitism, yeah? These are not outside of Marxism when you put it into practice. So a couple of things that I want you to know about Marxism from a media perspective. So political economic approaches to study of mass media always assume that the most important way of understanding the media is through power. Concentration of power, ownership. While we're on it, while we're talking about power and money and capitalism, left brain likes to measure everything. So capitalism likes to measure money. So it's measurement, right? So broadly speaking, political economic approaches, they always take the perspective, number one, that the media producers are more powerful than the audiences. That we as the audiences are relatively powerless. Even though we know, most of us today feel that we can't trust the media, even social media or traditional media. Even though we know we're receiving propaganda and lies, we don't know what the truth is. Yeah? So it suggests that the media have too much power in shaping how we understand the world politically and also in terms of commercial advantage. So, next week when I talk to you about political, economic and pluralist approaches, just touching briefly on pluralist approaches, a pluralist approach is a liberal approach which believes that the media provides democracy. Yeah? So a political economist will say, no, the media is biased because it's all about capitalism. That's what a political economist will say, that's what a Marxist will say. But a pluralist will say, no, and this is a little bit like Stuart Hall, I'll introduce you to him in a moment. What Stuart Hall says, no, we're not all passive, stupid consumers of media, are we? So we can make up our own minds. We're not passive victims of capitalist ideology. Or are we? That's a big question. We might not want to think that that the capitalist media is sort of brainwashing us and controlling what we think about the world, but it is. And we must not get ahead of ourselves. So I'm going to show you the first video now, which is Chomsky's and Herman's model. I'll talk much more next week about mass production under the heading of political economy. Just want to draw your attention to the two models that I'm giving you for media. So the one that we started today's lecture with, it says the subject, which is I, which is us, which is my culture, or the West, is separate from the object. So Eastern culture, the other, foreign, them. So it has huge. If that's the way you understand the world, if you then of course, historically, that's what happens. Imperialism, colonialism, racism, class conflict. This is all the result of separating these two things. And then we come to this more complex model. So this is S for subject over object, and we're in here. We're all in the world, creating the world, right? Paying attention to the world. And we are we're subjects and objects. We're not either or. It's not this binary opposition that the Western philosophy tradition talks about. So, in line with that, in line with what I just said, the complex, what I call the right brain media model, the right hemisphere subserves a broad, open attention that enables us to see ourselves connected to, and in the human case, to empathize. Now there's a key word about the right brain, empathy. Do we all know what empathy means? Yeah? So empathy is genuinely feeling the pain and the suffering of those Palestinian people right now. There are many other suffering people in the world. Of course, I'm just using it as one working example. And the danger is that even when you're a journalist and you're trying to report the perspective of Palestinian suffering, sometimes you might even fake your compassion because you don't know these people. And this is part of the danger of the media, because the media is always representing reality, okay? Whereas the reality that's in this room now, where's the representation? It's just your brains and my brain, right? But the media, this screen that always gets in the middle, yeah, distorts and changes how we empathize with people, how we empathize with animals, how we empathize with the planet